All right, so here's a video that's been a long time away from being done. Way back, I think I did a video, and this was back quite some time. This is basically my dad's truck. So normally you wouldn't put this kind of money or effort into fixing a 2005 pickup truck. Now that being said, this is a 2005 Rumblebee, and it's an actual Rumblebee. It's not just a decal kit. I believe there's a bit of a tune in it and whatever, but anyway, that's not what the video is about. It's the original yellow. We went ahead and did this with he's a big fan of Napa UAP, so we did the Nason, what they call full thane, which I guess is some name brand urethane, which is fine, and the paint is okay. Now the hood, cab, doors, all that was done quite some time ago. There's videos on that. And then finally I had a little, well, there's never time, but we basically just jammed stuff in, and the box is now painted, as is the tailgate, the grill, and the bumper. So this is kind of where we're at. Anyway, the reason I'm making the video, I explained in the other video like 6-7 months ago, whenever it was, back in the spring. If you look at a lot of these Dodge trucks, and even if you go into the, the 95 to 02, before this body style, when they started doing the hood, something Dodge did really terribly for some reason. When you look at how the hood follows the line here of the fender. So as you can see, the gap isn't bad. There's a little bit up here. Let's have a look at the other side. I forget what it looks like. That's not too bad. This is about as good as we could get it to sit as far as this being level. Now this hood was off of another truck, as were the fenders, which we think may have been, actually we thought they were aftermarket. It ended up being that they weren't aftermarket, but they are off of another truck. The doors, however, were also off another truck. They may have been aftermarket. We're not sure, but all in all, things line up. Not bad. Like, you can look at the gap of the door to the cab. Like, it's decent. It's as good as anything Dodge ever put out of the factory, and we all know these weren't perfect. Now, we did get a Rock Auto repair panel that went from here down. I think it was on this side. I could be mistaken, but nonetheless, no, I'm pretty sure it was this side we did it on. So what I like to do with these trucks, and I don't know if it happens over time, if things shift around, but a lot of the times these fenders go in under the hood instead of flush. Now here, it actually goes in under, but it's not like a lot. So most of that line looks the same. I don't know if I'm picking that up on camera, which is what you try to do, right? To get it the same. And you push your fenders out until they line up. And I mean, you only have so much movement before you lose the center of everything. So keep that in mind. But a lot of the times, I think what happened at the factory is they errored them in a little bit as opposed to middle, and most people wouldn't notice. But when you're taking the time to make something nice and clean, it's a good trick with these trucks. Now, my hood could go back a wee bit on this side, and I might do that, but the only way I'm going to do that is if I have enough room on this side. I'm pretty sure we do. So we might go back like maybe a 16th, and that's about it. If you look in here, you can see how the rubbers almost touch the grill, but not quite. Now keep in mind, the grill comes back to, I push it in here, and it hits a rubber block down here. There's only about a 16th of movement there, so the rubbers aren't necessarily something that needs to be watertight. I think it had more to do with keeping wind from blowing through and whatnot. But all the rubbers are in, all that. This particular truck, we never had the grill that goes in there. It looks like some have it and some don't. But this one had the tow hooks, and I'm wondering if it didn't. But then I also saw where the tow hooks, now if you see where they're bolted on, a lot of these are way over here. So there must have been variances, 05, 06, whatever, 04. But this is the way this one was. Now, I also saw that there's a nice chin spoiler that can go under the front, and I don't know if that's a variance or if something's missing, but this bumper was with the truck, and whatever it is, we could not find a replacement. So this is the one that had rips and tears and scrapes, and because this truck was used like a work truck with 360,000 kilometers. Now that being said, there was a time in its life where somebody bought the truck and he was a little hard on it, and I believe he blew the transmission out of it. Once that was replaced, he blew the engine out of it. And that was at like 330, 40,000 or 320, something like that. So we actually replaced the powertrain out of a slightly newer model. I think it was a year or two different. It might have been an 06 or 07 that only had 70,000 K. So American, if you're down in the States, what's that, like 35, 40, 45,000, somewhere in there. So the powertrain was pretty fresh. There's still less than 100,000 miles on the powertrain. But everything's been gone over, shocks and brakes, new calipers, brake lines. So this truck was something that my father had bought, not really being a guy who knew what a Rumblebee even was. And I said, someday that's going to be worth something. Now, I know opinions vary on that. Like some people might say, oh, just a pickup with a stripe on it. Cool, sarcastically. Look at my last video, you'll see what I mean. But realistically, there's guys that love these trucks for whatever, and it seems to be the older Mopar guys, guys in their 60s and 70s. They really dig these trucks, so much so that they actually command a little bit of money when they're nice. But yeah, so this is basically what we got, and I mean it's pretty decent for what it is. There's a little bolt that goes up in the top there. And then I think it had plastic pins, but it looks like slide-on clips. Some of the plastic behind it's not quite right, but there's enough there that I might put some long plastic pins in and put 2 little black bolts at the top. And I'm going to get something that's flat that looks like the push pins. That way, maybe you put them in with like a Torque with the little flatter round head, just to clean it up. Don't care what was factory. This is, like I said, it's my stepfather's truck, and we're cleaning this up and making it decent so the truck can be driven for as long as he's going to be alive. There's a couple little plugs in here where the headlights push in. As you can see, they're sloppy, and I knew that. The reflector has never been in this one, so we might look for a set of decent lights. And as long as they're half decent, I don't care about the fogging, because I can wet sand all that clear coat off the plastic, and then I just re-clear coat them and they're new. Good for another 10 years. Now this will probably be parked indoors, at the very least under a carport roof, so this stuff will probably last a long time. We have a few little things like down here. So that was, as this truck was rough and rusty and old, all the plastics under there. The original truck, it turned out trim clad yellow was close enough to the Ram color that when it was all beat and faded and it wasn't this bright, you could just kind of blend it in. Problem was, as the trim clad fades a year later, it starts to look less yellow and more beige, because trim clad just sucks. It doesn't hold up in the sun. That being said, it kept the truck alive for years as a bush truck, like a beater. So we didn't bother changing the plastics, but now that it's nice, this is something my stepdad can do. So he's going to hit a local junkyard and replace the plastic inner fenders, little stuff. There was never a key lock on this side on this truck. But this door handle I had, and it was mint, and all the stuff in it was mint, so that doesn't do anything. And we might replace it, but realistically nobody would really know, right? It's not like this is a rare option B-body Mopar. It's just a Ram Rumblebee, so we don't have to go too crazy. Now there used to be a little gasket in here, and you couldn't get them anymore. But really, it's just a sticky foam tape. So we put a double-sided, for putting on the trim pieces down the side of your vehicle. I put that in between. Whether it works or not, who knows? But everything is bolted tight, and there is a little gap. But it is what it is. So there's little things that... It's a funny thing, because when I restore something like this, it's one of those common F-body Firebirds. Every single part you need is available. But when you do this, you'd think, well, they're not that old. You can find stuff. This thing is basically 18 years old, and it's really weird finding the little, small, stupid things for these trucks. For instance, I know a guy who has a 2008, and that center dash, all the lights in it quit. And apparently the bulbs are weird. You can't really change them. However, you could get them and then solder them in. but there's a part number, but it doesn't mean that the part was available. So I forget what he ended up doing. I think he just ran a few little add-in dash lights out of like an older car, and he just basically knocked them out, and he just kind of dangled a couple in there so that he'd have some light so he could see like where his heat was turning on and stuff. But anyway, I just thought, you know, it'd be cool to share that, because I find these Dodges look weird a lot in the front end, but if you can get that to kind of flow together, you know, it's like at the front, the fender will come out to where it's just a touch under flush, but at the back, it looks like it goes right smooth. And I find when you're standing 20 feet away, 10 feet away in the parking lot, and you look at them, they stand out a little bit more. Now, I just put this on and put the grill back on, which they got this stupid metal cage. Now, I had to buy that aftermarket, and it fit, you know, it fit like OJ's glove, so it sucked. But anyway, stuff like that, right? This plastic here should have been replaced. You can see there's a little bit of Tremclad paint spatter on it. And it would not clean off with the reducer, but it had been there, who knows, 10 or more years. Again, we'll go yank one of those off at the junkyard off some other truck if we get a chance. But realistically, it doesn't really stick out now that I look at it. Probably should have repainted the tow hooks. It is what it is. We can always throw a little bit of paper or plastic over the plastic down there and hit it with a little bit of that rust treatment. Pour 15 maybe on the tow hooks. I don't know. If you guys have an idea, let me know. Pour 15 doesn't hold up in the UV, and maybe some rust fix out of a spray bomb. Spray it on and then just respray them black over top. You can see that yellow overspray there. Again, not from this job. These fenders were all painted. So yeah, that's another thing. So modern cars with modern numbers. This is a really, really handy thing to know. The cab was painted about 6 months or so ago, as the hood, doors, whatever, hood scoop. The grill, bumper, all this was painted. Now this paint, the one thing to know about the Nason full thing, now this may not be the case with all colors, but with the yellow, I find to get this paint nice and smooth to where you get an OEM or better finish, you got to pump up the air pressure a little bit. There's stuff that I paint anywhere from 22. That's basically, I've got the little gauge attached to the bottom of my paint gun. Now, the paint gun I use, if I'm using products, for instance, Limco Supreme single stage, I can run that at about 26, 27. The base coat I run down around 20 to 21. When I'm running, let's say, the clear coat that I like to use, it's a 2-coat. You know, you can basically do a sticky coat and like a tack coat and then 2 full wet coats. But I found that it recommends 2 full wet coats right on the box. Now that I've gotten used to that with that particular clear, that works good. Now I shoot that on about 27, maybe 28. Less than that, you get a bit orange peel. And again, this depends on your gun and everything else. Now the base coat, when I do it, I run that really, really low. Unless it's metallic, then I'll crank it up a bit, or you'll get too dark. But that being said, this paint, you got to really run on that 30, like even 28, 29. It's got to be 30, like a solid 30. And you will get, I wonder if I can show it. Don't mind the dust, it's been sitting outside for 6 months. But if I move it into the light, you can see there's a little bit of ripple in it. But it's very little, like it's less than OEM. And I mean, it looks good. You can probably catch it on the grill as the grill is fresh and shiny. There, you can see in the light, there's that little bit. And I don't know if it looks harsh or not, but it is very, very low peel, which I kind of dig. The downside, we started with a gallon. We did the cab and all the pieces, all the pieces, but keep in mind, when we did the doors, I had to hang them in a way that we could do all the insides, the outsides. One thing I'll give these Dodges, man, they got a big frickin' door. So getting in and out of these mid-2000s, now with your 4-door trucks, of course, the door is cut down shorter, and then they put a big one in the back. But when you have the 2-door, I mean, the whole truck is door. But everything on the truck, like down there, it's big. Like everything is big. So basically everything takes a lot of paint. And I mean, now you wouldn't know this, but I painted the truck to here, let it overspray to here roughly, and the same with this, and I just let it overspray down. You can kind of see where it's not beautiful right there. And then I took a little bit of, excuse me again, but yeah, so the color from there to there, and that's the old base clear coat. So we basically didn't take anything from here in the middle. We didn't bother doing anything with that. There's a spot down there, we treated it for rust and just sprayed some yellow on it. You can see those little black marks. We're not too concerned about those. What happened was there was some little marks, and after doing all the body work and stuff and getting the paint on, I thought that should have been sealed up a little better, you know. And again, my dad's an old guy. He's not a bodywork guy at all. He does come and help with assembly and stuff a lot because he's very mechanical. He's pretty bad at bodywork. So some of the stuff he did, you had to kind of watch. And nothing terrible, but little things. Like there was some little marks, and I thought where things had been welded from the cab corners and whatnot. So we didn't want anything to get in there just in case they were hollow. So we just kind of seam sealed them up, you know. Once the box is on, you won't see anything down here. That's just dirt off the back tire. Must have spun a bit in the grass moving it around outside. But you can see how, when you look at the door, how it goes down to the side and whatnot. Before everything was painted, I had the doors on the truck. All this was blocked together and fitted as close as we could. And this side worked really, really well. When we put it back together, it fit pretty nice. Now on the other side, it's a little bit out, but I know it was pre-fit, and for some reason we were having a bit of a hard time with it. So this side is not 100%. Yeah, see from here, you can see that the bottom is out and the top is in a bit. So we're gonna have to loosen the bottom one and move it in and probably move the fender. But I noticed the door up here at the fender kind of went in too. So we're gonna have to slightly adjust the door out and maybe touch up the fender a bit. But we got it pretty close. And this is a vehicle that, like I say, this is a 2005 pickup truck. We're not winning awards with this. We don't care. The only thing wrong with the one door, for some reason, this was all rusted out. And if you look at it, you can see where it's not quite perfect here or here, and up over the top. If you come to the outside, I mean, it's absolutely flawless. So what happened here, and we don't know why, it was rotten up in here, and there was some little humps on the outside. So we sheeted in a new piece of steel inside, butt welded it in. And then here, I've got a piece welded. So this has been welded to create the seam, and it came down to here, and we went along the seam. And as you can see, it's a touch off right here, but it's very, very close. So we gently knocked that in, welded it in. Then we put a little bit of seam sealer in this groove. But as for the rest, there's no filler or Bondo up in there. That is literally weld grounded smooth. And honestly, if I didn't tell you it was there, most people wouldn't notice. You do see that if you really want to look for it. And then you can see where the seam sealer just sort of stopped because, you know, again, Dodge didn't bother. Neither did we. There's no overlap in the rocker. It's welded in such a way that it's, you know, you don't see it. There's a little bit back here, right here, a little bit of weld, and we came across here and then up. But I mean, it's pretty minimal. We could have, again, a little bit of filler, but we tried to not go too crazy with the filler and stuff. The other thing we did, and I got videos on that, we had to re-weld a piece in here of channel all the way to the back into the floor. And then we lifted the piece that holds the seat under here. There's a big brace. We drilled out the welds. We bent it up. And I had to replace the whole floor pan, which they don't make for these. But there's this weird shape underneath the floor. And it is your support. And the support was okay. So we basically cut most of the floor pan out. Now in these trucks, when they make them, it's not like an old car. They actually run the floor pans this way. It's kind of stupid. Now, I don't know if they make a replacement yet, but when we started ordering parts for this, they didn't at that time, or at least nothing was available to us. So we basically custom made our floor pan, and then I remade this whole back section that comes up to about here, all the way back. We threw the old carpet back in. We're thinking about hitting the junkyard to see if we can get something a little nicer. It's a little stained, but I told my father basically, you know, take this out and get it like professionally cleaned. You know, the seats are not original. There's a little wear there and a little tear there, but otherwise these are good. Now, my stepdad's brother is an upholsterer, so he's going to take care of these. So we're not going to worry about that. And I think they're going to do like a black with a yellow and a yellow insert, because these are kind of a luxury seat, which was better than the Rumblebee. But I mean, they're kind of not awesome. But when you first bought this truck, you know, like I say, it was 10, 15 years ago. It was kind of beat up, and he used it to haul wood and go hunting, and it had scratches down the side. It wasn't all banged up, but realistically, we didn't care. So what had happened is he stopped driving it because the box just started to fall apart. The rockers were bad. The cab corners had been just repaired by him real quickly, probably a couple, 2, 3 times. So basically, one day I went up and he had it parked in his other garage. He's got 2 garages, one at the house and then one up on the mountain where he lives. And he had it parked up there for a while. And I said, well, what are you going to do with it? He goes, I don't know. If I could find a box, maybe I'd fix it up a bit again. For some reason, he likes this thing. He's got like a modern, much newer truck, but he likes this truck. So one day I just went up and took it out of the shed and fired it right up. And of course, he had it sitting there, not on the road, with a brand new battery in it. So we basically, I said, just bring it to my house. And I mean, over the next year or two, we'll do whatever we can. Basically, brand new tailgate. We had these grills for the back tail lights. They hadn't been on in a while. Rumblebees have a aluminum one, but I painted this one to the box because I think it's a cleaner look. But he has the aluminum one. It looks super rough because of the mileage and being outdoors. But, you know, you could always sand it and polish it and whatever. The grill is original, but we tore it all down. We took all the little plastic rivets out and took all the grills out. And basically, I just finished putting them back in this morning. Like I was saying before, that was all beat and scratched and banged up. There was some things that were melted and filled and epoxied, and then it's a TPO plastic, I think they call it, so your epoxies don't really stick. So I went back and ground that out, and we had to fix it a different way. So then we epoxied the whole thing. Now, epoxy primer is not necessarily what you'd use, but I went with the CRE 321, which is a go-to for me, and we epoxied the hell out of this. Now, we were going over a lot of different things, like your original paint. Most of it was sanded, but all the scuff marks. But it gave us something that we could do a little bit of filler work too. And then we did it again. We were using it for the high build properties and the sticky properties, not so much, you know, for burying metal, obviously. So that's not what it was about. So, I mean, it turned out pretty good. I mean, when you came down here, this was all like, it looked like a tiger scratched into the side of it, you know, on both sides. And a lot of chips and stone chips and this sort of thing. So 90% of that, the primer took care of it, which was great. Now, I mean, depending on your location, you can probably go to a big junkyard and find this stuff, especially down in the States. But up here in Canada, a lot of these trucks were sport and STs and whatever the hell they were. None of them seem to have this particular bumper. So, and again, we didn't want to go crazy with this truck. We took our time, spent way too much labor on it, but money-wise, we bought a box, used doors, used fenders, used hood. Tailgate was brand new because there's just not a good used one out there. And then, well, there was, but the guys at the big yards up here in Canada, even a year and a half ago, last fall, I guess, so about a year ago, they still wanted like, what was it, $700-800 for a loaded tailgate that they take off a truck, assuming it's mint, and then $400 or $500 for, you know, if it needs some work and it's banged up. I think I spent 300 Canadian on a brand new tailgate, and it was the CAPA certified, so it was okay for collision work. It wasn't the cheapie, and ironically, the cheapie, which was identical, was $5 less. So for $5, I went with the good one. Now, of course, fast forward a year and a half, or whatever it is, after COVID and everything else, who knows what those tailgates cost? But if it's like everything else, way more than it should. Of course, the old guys, they like all the stickers in the back window, but that's all right. Yeah, I'm kind of a clean guy. I don't even like trim pieces and stuff on my vehicles, but you know, to each his own. And the mirrors, yeah, there's a little bit of sticky stuff that we got to clean up, which was from the plastics that were inside the doors, which is like your, what is it, a vapor barrier or whatever it is. It's got that black stuff, so the mirrors were sitting on a pile with those, so we got to clean those off. But otherwise, these ones weren't all scratched. We'd got them before because the originals were all beat up. So I guess all this stuff was thrown at Dad's because, you know, there was a lot of parts. What else did we do? We took the windows right out of the doors, brought them in the house on the table, and tinted them real nice. Can't remember the percentage, but not quite as dark as what the ones that came out were. But they were so old, they were, you know, you couldn't see through the truck like this, but it was the purple tint. They were all bubbling and they were rough. And again, you know, old guys, just put them back in, they'll be fine. We did a reasonable job. We got one little air bubble right there, you know, and it matches the back window pretty nice. So anyway, I probably talked long enough. Most people probably won't even finish the video. If you do comment that you did, because that's pretty cool. But it is what it is. No, they're not a spectacular thing, but people love them. And this is a good looking truck. This will be every bit as decent as a new truck now. I think they had something like 350 horse from the factory. I believe it was. It could be more, but I know I've got a 2014, and they've got that rated at, I think in 14-15 they went from 395 to 398, and then for some reason 17 they go back to 395. Something to do with heads. There you see the box on the back of my truck. So we're basically going to put that in the old shop. I've got something set up where I can lift the box straight up, back the truck under it to put it on. But yeah. Anyway, that's it. Cheers.